Right now, the biggest opportunity for agent developers is to build these very specific research type agents where LLMs are great, but if they're not connected to the internet and they don't have structure in terms of the output, it's very, very hard to actually get meaningful outcomes from them. We've tested like 400 agents. I think it boosts the whole ecosystem up. If companies are using agents that actually work reliably and that they can prove a positive ROI, now it gives them a lot higher propensity to go test other stuff down the road.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the AI Agent podcast series. We have a very special guest today here, Adam Silverman, founder of Agent Ops Agency and now Agent Stack. And like I kind of just saw today or yesterday, like another RPA product. Really curious. I think one kind of initial question, how do you keep up with all the stuff that you're doing and your threads going viral, everything kind of really going great?
Honestly, we're so lucky. It's all the team. Like I wish I could say there's anything else, but we put together like an amazing team. And really, we've been very fortunate since day zero with Agent Ops to have a good understanding of like what works in the agent space. So for people who don't know, Agent Ops is the leading observability, monitoring, and compliance platform for AI agents. And throughout that process, like we've seen like thousands of developers come and build agents basically across a wide range of verticals. So we've seen sales agents, we've seen RPA type agents, we've seen customer support agents, all these different use cases kind of come through our platform. And we're lucky to kind of see, okay, this is where the industry is moving. Like this is actually what works in production. And throughout this entire process, what we realized is that companies want a very easy way to build agents. So one of our lead engineers, Braylon, she actually built out this project about a month ago now called Agent Stack. And Agent Stack is the quickest way to deploy enterprise-grade agents. So we're actually plugged in with Composio. We have integrations with a lot of the other top like unified API providers. We have different vector databases that are supported. And the goal is that basically you can switch between frameworks like CrewAI, AutoGen, all these different kind of these swarms and a bunch of other ones super quickly. You can get started very quickly. We have templates available. And then you can also save your tools as primitives. So if you want to go and switch between different frameworks, we make it really, really easy to do that. We also run a consulting business. So if companies are actually looking for end-to-end agents built, we're working with some Fortune 500 companies, some governments now, some big businesses to actually build out these agents. So a lot of them do use Agent Stack. And then maybe a bit later, we can kind of talk through what we're seeing on the RPA side. But really great to be chatting.
Yep. I think it's a lot of insightful things that like our audience would love to know. Like, so you mentioned, I think, let's start with like agency, where kind of you are building agents for these Fortune 500 companies. Like what type of agents you are seeing it like go into the production right now? I think that's a question that I think all the agent builders are really curious and kind of trying to find an answer to. So very curious about that.
So I can share like a graphic after, or if anybody reaches out, like I'm happy to kind of share. We've put together some pretty comprehensive like use cases and case studies in terms of like what we're seeing actually in production. But I think the big buckets that we've seen actually get productionized to millions of users. One is chatbots. So like every company has, wants to do RAG over some type of internal database and then maybe make like a customer support agent or have something that like their company or their employees can actually go and reference. So that's like a big one. We've seen that across the board. We've seen a lot of research agents. So research across like real estate. So companies come to us and they're like, hey, we want to build an agent that can every morning look for lots in Idaho, for example, that are farmland. And then we want to go cross-reference it with, data on zoning laws. And then we want to figure out if from a financial perspective, this piece of land makes sense to purchase. So they do like financial analysis on it. And they want to take all that data and send it to a person. And like these agents exist today that you can build out these automations really, really simply. So research is a big factor. We've also seen like a lot of financial research. One thing I'm very bullish on is like, right now, the biggest opportunity for agent developers is to build these very specific research type agents where LLMs are great, but if they're not connected to the internet and they don't have structure in terms of the output, it's very, very hard to actually get like meaningful outcomes from them. So we've been very bullish on these research agents. But we have some people who are building like coding assistants. So there's a whole bunch of companies like Cortex and a bunch of other companies out there that are like building these like almost like, engineering type agents where you can go in and just say, hey, here's a product I want to build and see it all the way through to execution. So it's really interesting from our perspective, just seeing like this wide range of use cases that people are using agents for. And we have some businesses that are coming to us being like, we have identified 120 areas in which we want to build agents for. And they're coming to us saying, hey, let's get our first couple off the ground. Let's see what's working well. So I kind of keep on talking through use cases, but let me know if anything else would be helpful.
I think it would be great to kind of also understand like which sectors particularly you're getting the most kind of interest in?
So I think finance, there's a lot of opportunity right now. We've consistently, like, big banks are reaching out to us. They have propensity. They have a lot of employees. They're very interested to figure out like what boring tasks that their employees do that can be fully automated. We see a lot of opportunity in healthcare too. So we're HIPAA compliant. So that's been awesome. A lot of consulting firms are reaching out. So this is an interesting one where they're not the actual end user. Oftentimes it's like their customer is the end user, and then you're seeing kind of like typically more regulated industries are going through these consulting firms to actually figure out how to build these solutions. But we've seen everything. Like, we had a person reach out looking to pull like obituary data. Basically, we've had people reach out and they want to build like fitness coach agents that, like, here's to analyze all my health data and now come up with a fitness plan for us. Like, the beauty of these agentic architectures is that you can basically build any type of use case. Like, there is no limiting factor. The only limiting factor is kind of, you're bound by how good the LLMs are. You're bound by how good the tooling is. And you're basically bound by like your imagination in terms of what is possible. So I think a lot of, you don't want to bite off more than you can chew, but I think getting like an MVP or getting a simple agent out there, anybody can really do that, whether it's through no-code platforms or actually going and developing your own.
No, that totally makes sense. And I'm really curious now, I think, about, like, I would love to know more about your journey. I know you started probably, like, the first product was Agent Ops, right? And I think during that time, or probably like around that time, like, kind of you got a really good mind share of like the Twitter audience and around. So kind of like probably right now you're one of the top, I would say, Twitter personalities on the AI agent space. And that definitely helps from what I can tell. So
Be
like,
too kind. I just post some things I think are interesting, but thank you so much.
yeah, so would love to know like about your journey, kind of how it all started,
Sweet.
how probably you met your co-founder, etc., and how is it going now?
Yeah, me and my co-founder know each other for years. Like, we're both alumni from this like program where you work internationally. And like, basically we've been building agents, funny enough, since March 2023. So always throughout my entire career, I've always been like working jobs or starting companies, and I've always tried to like automate the processes that I was doing. One of these processes that we realized was a huge opportunity in March of 2023 was data entry automation. So we had actually like built an amazing Chrome extension. It's funny enough, people are still using us and we still get support tickets on it. But it's a very, very basic agent that you can upload like a PDF to and automatically fill out online forms. So there's so many random applications of this technology. So there was like insurance companies really wanted it, logistics companies. So if you have like a bill of lading or something like that, you want to take all the data from it, put it into like your shipping distributor or something like that. They want like automating this process could save a ton of time. We were pitching it to like massive companies. And the issue was we kept running up to a point where it was like 90% accurate. So it worked really, really well. But when we went to these massive organizations, they were like, we need 4 nines of accuracy. And if it doesn't have 4 nines of accuracy, we'll never touch it in terms of bringing it into production. And at the time, there was no tooling to debug agents. There's no way to observe what they were doing. There was no way to see like, where LLM calls were failing, or where maybe like we were using like a lot of OCR at the time. Like maybe there was an issue with the OCR provider. Maybe the OCR was providing the wrong information back. And this is where we really like dove in deep. And that was kind of like how we started building Agent Ops. Was initially started off this internal like debugging tool for ourselves. Alex like was at a bunch of hackathons. He's big on like the hackathon scene here in SF, and he was like pitching like this very early version of Agent Ops and even working on a lot of these hackathons. And a lot of these developers are coming to him saying, hey, this is great. Like, it's almost like Datadog for agents. Like, we need this. Like, the way agents are architected require this new like form of observability. So that was really, really cool to get into it pretty early. We had some amazing partners early on. I think like we learned a lot in terms of like working with startups versus big companies, that like we love supporting startups, and like we empower like anybody who's listening to this, like go test out the product. But where we see the biggest opportunities with these massive companies who are a bit more like they're never going to build their own tooling internally. They would much rather find like a vendor that works really well off the shelf. So that's been great. But the biggest thing is we're in the community. So we run like one of the largest groups of agent developers, as you know. We have like just really good relationships with a lot of the top founders in the space. And throughout that process, we've just seen like where the opportunities are, what's working, what's successful, what's not working, what is maybe like, maybe will work in a few years down the road from now, pending better LLMs. And I think that's one thing that anybody listening should kind of think through is just, if you're trying to get into an industry, like we only started this in March 2023, like for the first time, we only incorporated, I think, in September of 2023, like there are, like, if you want to become an expert in the space, just go immerse yourself and dive heads deep. Like, it's so easy just to be like, okay, who are the best people to follow? Go follow them, message them. Like the amount of people I just messaged, like I think at one point I probably messaged you. I think there's a lot of other founders that like I've just reached out to cold, and people are willing to talk with you. Like it is really what it comes down to. So I think our story was just like, we saw the opportunity, we were building some early products, and then from there it's just like we kept talking to people and kind of reconfirming like our thesis of what we thought was necessary in the space.
So that totally makes sense. Like I think we both have code messages. I remember kind of like reading one of your tweets and kind of a video like from you about an AI agent demo, and kind of kind of tweeting like messaging you on Twitter, and like your co-founder I met on hackathon. So kind of like it totally is like in parallel, like analogous as you mentioned. Like he is more on the hackathon side. I met him, I remember, on the Anthropic builder day. We were both there and building stuff. So yeah, really interesting. And
You realize like all you have to do is just get in the scene, like not even in the scene, but just show up. Like I think 99% of life is just showing up and like building your own, like build your own network. Like if you don't have it, like what we did is we just made this group chat with all the top founders, and it was really great. It was like, now we want to bounce ideas off of, you see other people contributing to the community, like this type of stuff. It's so impactful. I think like it can go across any vertical. It doesn't matter if you're selling like, if you're selling used cars, go make the best group chat of people who are selling used cars, and you will be successful. There's one guy who I kind of think like made a similar parallel through. He's on Instagram. His name's Vukum, and he does these like watch videos, and then he sells watches on like Instagram. And he's created this like group chat of like all these people who are interested in buying watches. And I've met him personally, but I haven't met him. But I mean, it looks like he's being very successful doing this, and it's just a matter of like he created his own serendipity, he created his own like opportunity. And anybody, like if you're thinking like, hey, I'm watching this video, hey, I want to go build like a vertical agent for, and I threw an idea yesterday, so I'll just say the one I threw up, but like I want to build a CRM that exists in your email. Like if you want to do that, just make a group chat with all the people who are most interested in CRMs. Go through Twitter, scrape like data, and like, hey, all these people are tweeting about CRMs every day. Maybe some of them work at the big companies, maybe some of them work in their own projects, maybe some are startups. And there's such valuable opportunity just kind of getting the right people in the room together, kind of thinking about ideas. And I really empower people to just like try it. Like the worst case scenario is you spend like a couple hours setting up a group chat, or the the best case scenario on the other end is you build like a vibrant community, and now you become like kind of the person who curated this amazing group of people.
That makes sense. I think kind of like the community that you have at Twitter, kind of like the agent community, that is one of the best one, and like has some of the best pokes and content out there for sure. Coming to, I think there like in agent ops, you have kind of really simplified the DX. Like, I mean, it's as simple as doing an agent ops in it, right? And your partnership with almost all the agentic frameworks. I think there's some parallel like to what we have essentially, like because Composio also has like partnership with all the agentic frameworks, and it's like in all the frameworks is just Composio toolset. So how are you kind of thinking about the DX? I think I'm pretty sure that's one of the big part of like building agent ops, making the developer experience as smooth as possible. And what has been like some of the key things on that journey as you solve for improving the gigs?
Yeah, I think we realized very quickly that like if it's going to take developers more than 30 seconds to install a tool, like you've just lost their mind share. And now you've spent so much time getting somebody to like the sign up page. You've gotten them, like first started some like up, like, top of funnel marketing. They saw like a post of mine or something like that. Then they like eventually get to the website. Then they create an account. Then they fill out our onboarding flow. And then now they need to use the product. And like there's a lot of friction throughout that whole process. You might take like, let's just say like that whole process might take 90 seconds to really do. And now that integration doesn't take like 10 seconds to do. So there's pip install agent ops. That becomes our agent ops in it. Like you need to make it as super, super simple as possible, or else you've just lost the opportunity to convert them in my eyes. So we spent a lot of time. It took like effort to get these like very like, simple abstractions and make it as simple as possible for anybody to integrate. But I was like, we just want to make sure the developer experience is great. So if you're like a large company and you're prototyping actively and you're testing all these different frameworks, we have companies that come to us and they're like, hey, we're using AgentOps because we are testing Crew AI, we're testing AutoGen, we're testing LangChain, we're testing Llama Index, we're testing Llama Stack, and there's a bunch of other ones that they're testing as well. And we're building our own Python agent. So like that's a very common use case that they come to us with. And then they're like, if each one of those took like an hour to set up, you've just lost their interest. Then I was like, okay, in a couple lines of code, you can now basically get full monitoring, observability, and like get compliance basically metrics over everything your agent is doing in production, that is like the biggest opportunity. So I recommend like anybody who's building like products either in the agent space or just products in general, it's like figure out like making the like, I'll say just bluntly, like the sexiest, easiest developer experience. Like if you can figure that out, it gets people very excited to use your product. It decreases the friction. And then now it's like, now that somebody's on board, you can prove that your product has value to them as quickly as possible. And that's, I think, one thing that I've seen a lot of dev tools where it's like, there's a ton of value there. They're amazing products. But in terms of actually getting to a point of like, hey, I'm seeking value in it, could take a bunch of steps. And if anybody like goes through our onboarding or has any feedback, like I would like to even take this down and make it simpler. So like send me an email, like find me like on LinkedIn or Twitter, send me a DM. Like if you go through our developer experience and you're like, I think this could be better by doing blank, we will implement it like within the evening, I promise. So that's one thing I'll throw out there is like, it's also constantly improving. Like don't just like think that, oh, we have good developer experience and that we want to just, we're going to, hang up our towel. It's like, this is constantly evolving process for us.
No, but that totally makes sense. And so on that front, like where do you see like my kind of like my own experience tells me like I used agent ops monitoring a lot when we were doing a lot of complex agents. Like for example, we did Sui agent stuff like kind of around Sui bench essentially, and that's where kind of monitoring was really really important, just because you have to kind of iterate on these runs, etc. Where do you think is where do you think it's the most important, like in the agent lifecycle journey, and when do most of the builders come to you? Like most probably it's after they start building and figure out like their agent is misbehaving, etc. Is that the kind of pivotal point, or is it something else?
So surprisingly, like what we've seen just from like our most recent cohorts of users is people are building with agent ops from day zero, which is amazing. So like what I like to say is like when you start building an agent from day zero, what you should be thinking about is evals and monitoring. It's the most important piece. Like if you don't know how to evaluate what your agent is good at, it'll never be successful. So anybody who's interested in talking about evals, we actually recently brought on Wayne, who's like one of the first contributors to AutoGPT, or one of the maintainers for AutoGPT. He built out like a lot of their evals over there. And we are like very, very dead set focused on making the best eval product ever for agents. So we've been working with a few enterprises doing this now. And anybody who's interested, like reach out and like I will give you some best practices in terms of how to think about evals. But from my perspective, day zero, think about evals and think about monitoring. Because if you can't understand what your agent is doing and you can't quantify how good the agent is, you will never be, not that you will never be successful, but like there will be a point at which that you're going to realize, oh, wait, why did I not do this? So we've had like companies who are, got to pretty significant revenue. Now they're at a point where it's like, oh, we actually have to start thinking about evals because now there's 100,000 people using our product and they've just built these systems and they worked well enough so they don't really think much about it. But really like thinking from day zero is super, super important, and we empower everybody to do that. A couple of things have been cool. So we launched Agent Stack, and I don't know exactly where this will get posted, but we can add some links to it. And the reality is a lot of company or businesses now are coming in through Agent Stack and saying, hey, like this is the easiest way to get started building agents. And that's been great. So like from day zero, we have observability, monitoring, and everything baked into it. So we also have companies who come to us and said, hey, we spent 6 months building out this agent and it's not working reliably. Can you figure out a way to basically like integrate agent ops into it? So it does go both ways, where some businesses do come to us after they've already like their products in market, or they need like maybe it's the missing piece to like from a regulatory perspective. Some big banks, they'll come to us and they'll say, we need to monitor everything the agent does in production. So every website they visit, every database they have access to, every LLM call being made, every user that initiates the agent, what network it was on, all these data points. And like we built this agent, but we didn't build it with proper monitoring, from day zero. And the beauty is they can like implement agent ops in like a matter of seconds into their product and get that full end-to-end breakdown of exactly what the agents are doing.
Yeah, no, makes total sense. And I think as we are speaking, by the way, I just realized like just before our podcast, like O1 released function calling. So I think things are getting even more exciting.
Yeah, function calling is amazing. I think like one of the biggest opportunities with like LLMs in general is, can you get them to select the right tools? So I'm very bullish, and this is one also reason I love what you guys are working on, is that the best agents I'm seeing right now are basically API wrappers. And that's all they really are. It's like, hey, here's a bunch of like unified API providers, or here's a bunch of APIs, and you're just using an LLM oftentimes to select what tools to use. Or you're linking together a bunch of functionalities, like, or a bunch of API calls, and then maybe using an LLM for some like reasoning step. So I'm very bullish that this is like a huge opportunity. And like a lot of these agents don't need to be super complex. It's just a matter of like testing it out, seeing like, start off like anybody who's like listening, it's just like start building the most bare bones, simple agent. Like you don't need to revolutionize the world. You don't need to build AGI in your basement. It's just like try and build something very, very simple. You can even start with no code tools. Like they're pretty good to just get going with. But I mean, that's where it's very interesting to see like the same functionality almost exists across every like horizontal agent provider now, because behind the scenes, maybe they're just using Composio, maybe they're just using a unified API provider, maybe they're just like they're all using the same tooling. So inherently, like the upper bounds in terms of limits of like what's possible with agents are largely tied to what's possible from APIs.
Makes total sense. And I think when you mentioned like simple to complex agents, like what is the biggest session that you have seen in an agent ops?
Oh my God, we've seen sessions that run multiple days. Like we had one company that was using us that basically they were doing very in-depth market research, and they would cost like thousands of dollars in LLM calls, and it would go across like 24 to 36 hours sometimes. Like, and it was like, but it would be like the final output was very in-depth market research, similar to what you'd pay like McKinsey or Bain or something like that, like hundreds of thousands of dollars to create. So you go conduct in-depth market research on the, car wash business in Miami with a focus on car washes that have long tunnels or something like that. And it will literally go pull every data point that exists on the internet surrounding that. It'll synthesize it. It'll come with a full business plan. It'll create financial models. It'll find, new opportunities for expansion. And these are the types of things where it's like, wow, like this is crazy. Like if you were to go pay a consultant, first of all, they couldn't get it done that quickly. Like there's no way you can do this in 24 hours. When you're analyzing like thousands of websites, like humans are bound by time and like brain capacity. Like we can't go, synchronously across all these different, websites and really consolidate that much data. So this has been really cool to see, like making humans like, giving them almost like superpowers, or giving them like, like augmenting how much work they could possibly do. Like at the end of the day, you need a person to ask the right questions. You need a person to be able to build out these systems, but now you just supercharge them to be like way more productive than they could ever be just by being an actual human.
Yeah, no, I totally agree in that sense. Like a SMB in like older times wouldn't have been able to hire McKinsey for solving their problem, but they can definitely bear $1,000 to kind of solve these operational challenges or any kind of revenue challenges, etc. So that's definitely an kind of empowerment of everybody essentially, not just them being a players.
Yeah, I still think the biggest opportunity right now is in these massive organizations. So if you have like more than 10,000 employees, like we'd love to chat with you. Like I'm very big on it. And I think that how do I put this? I think a lot of like SMBs, like there's a lot of simple automations, but they probably don't need to go much farther than like a Zapier. Like I think they can go onto that and get a lot of the automations. And yes, there's a learning curve in terms of getting there. But I think the largest opportunities in these very complex organizations with legacy software that have legacy systems, like if you can really dive in there, like that's where the biggest opportunity for growth is.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. And now coming to the interesting tweet that you made, like I think yesterday, if I remember, like around the new RPA product. Would love to more about that and what's the kind of thesis, what's on your mind.
So I don't know. I don't think I've really talked about this publicly yet. So this might be the kind of the first time it's out there. But I've made a few tweets over the past couple of months talking about how really the process of building agents is broken. And what I mean by that is that to build an agent right now, it's a very reactive process. So every agent builder right now is reactive. And what I mean by that is that like you have to think, I have this problem. So let's just say the problem, I'll maybe use the same example as before, but like maybe the problem is I want to research properties to buy. So you have to find, okay, I have to know that this is a problem. Then you have to go find the right tool to, to build out a solution for it. So you could try these no-code tools. You could try building it yourself. Then you have to figure out who's going to build it for you. So even if you're using a no-code tool, either you're going to have to build it yourself, you're going to have to hire a consultant, or you're going to have to, get their team or like buy some like kind of closed source agent. And then you have to go and you have to deploy it, which is a whole beast within itself. Then you have to monitor it to make sure it's working consistently. Then you have to have evals around it to making sure like, hey, over time, this is not kind of going in the wrong direction. So everything I just explained to you is like pulling teeth. It's like a nightmare process. Like this sounds like it's good because you can get to a final outcome if you do it correctly. And I've seen like, now hundreds and hundreds of use cases that are in production on the agentic side. But you're not going to get like a Fortune 500 business executive to go and build out one of these processes is my logic. I think it's very time consuming. It's not a sexy process. And it's something that I think was fundamentally broken. So we're working on this new product right now. What it does is basically, the easy way to put it is it records everything you do on your screen and then proactively comes up with automations for you. So it's still like, it's very early. We're working with some beta customers, and anybody who's listening who wants to get like early access, like definitely reach out. But the goal is that instead of you having to think like, hey, here's an agent that I want built, here's an automation that I want built, it just proactively will come to you and saying, hey, I saw you did this task 10 times over the past week. We've process mined it. We know exactly, what this task is. And here's the automation already built out for you. So it goes from like the user having to be the leader saying, hey, I think this is possible to automate. Like what I recommend people to do even like before we publicly release this is just like keep a notepad on your desk of like, here are all the things that I do manually every day, or even record your screen, or like write a blog, or like have like a Google Doc of like, here are all the processes I do manually every day, and start cracking away at automating some of those. But the goal is I don't want people to ever have to think about what they can automate. I want people to automatically have automations at their fingertips. And it's a very complex problem. We're actually like hiring quite actively kind of on this particular project. So anybody who's listening who's like, this excites me, like shoot me a message. I'm always happy to chat. But this is like where I see the biggest opportunities. So the automations we're going to be starting off with initially are not going to be crazy complex, but the focus is, can they be done 100% reliably? So when I was talking initially about like the agents we were building in March 2023 and only reaching like 90% accuracy, that won't cut it with this type of product. Like you need 4 nines of accuracy. It needs to guaranteed work. So it's a beast. It's a massive opportunity, but it's one of the things we're most excited about in the agent space right now.
Got it. Yeah, I think I remember the whole kind of citizen developer program and all those, like, I think earlier era of like process mining, UiPath, automation anywhere kind of type of companies. But now I think it's actually possible. At that time, I think that promise of citizen developer didn't pan out because the technology was still not there. But I definitely can foresee things really differently now.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of time. But I think that the biggest thing is like processes are very complex within businesses. So figuring out how to like standardize these processes. One thing that a couple of our pilot customers are talking to us about is like, hey, we'd like to have it like this automation be sent to a manager to review. So it's like, hey, we saw someone on your team do this a few times. Let's get a manager to review, what this looks like, and then actually allow the employee to have it automated. And these are things I think are really important because a lot of companies already have like mobile device management software. They already have something of like process mining. There's a bunch of startups doing this that have been around for like almost like a decade now. But I think now the opportunity is, okay, let's leverage all this data, which the data exists, and let's actually build these like really sophisticated automations with it. And that's one thing. So everything will actually, like a lot of it will be based in agent stack. So the goal is like, the reason with building agent stack is like, now we have the primitives in a way to actually go build out these pretty robust, complex agents. I think Braylon tweeted about it like a few weeks ago, but we think like the evolution, there will kind of be like a V0 equivalent for building agents where you can just go and like ask, hey, I need this built. So that like inherently goes to, okay, if we have a process built out of like everything an agent needs to be doing, great, now we can go prompt, this system very well. But yeah, like I think this is where I see the biggest opportunity for success in the space, because I don't want people to be limited by, okay, I have to watch this YouTube video, or I have to keep up with like Twitter news, or I have to like understand how to actually like go build out these agents. I think the best parallel right now is like Webflow. Like I could go build a website in Webflow, you could go build a website in Webflow. But if I want to go recreate the Apple website, let's just say on Webflow, it takes a ton of time. Like I don't know if I could do that, but I could go hire a Webflow expert who knows how to do that and could actually probably make like a pixel perfect copy of the Apple website. And that's how I feel with all of the agent builders right now, is like, you have to be an expert. Like I have to contact the founder of these companies to like sit down and be like, how do I actually use this product to get a really deep understanding of it? Like I could watch the YouTube, I could go through the academies, I can go through all these processes, but I want it, like if it was as simple as, hey, this is what I need to automate, can you automate it? That would make my life like a million times easier.
No, totally makes sense. Coming to kind of like, I think GTM side of things, I know you have open source like the agent ops framework, right? And like I'm really curious, what are your GTM strategies? Is open source big part of it, etc.?
More so than even open source, I think it's just building in public. Like we're so big on like build in public, get people believing in us. Like I think the feedback cycles we get from building in public are truly unparalleled. And like we have kind of this like company mission. It's like, what did you win today? What did you post today? And we kind of at the end of every day at stand up, like we have these conversations with the whole team. And I think it's important to like every day kind of be compounding and building in public so people can see like, hey, this team is actually working. And I think like some companies go the other side, and I've seen a lot of success too, where it's like go fully stealth until product is like incredible and whatever. But I think we've been very fortunate by building in public. We're at the position now where like people know about us. People are willing to try out our experiments. Like Agent Stack, for example, started off just fully as an experiment. We're like, let's try this thing out. And then now these developers are using it to build companies, and people are like using it for internal tooling. And so that would have never happened. Like we would have never been able to test the thesis if we weren't building in public first. So I think this is like a very interesting perspective that a lot of businesses maybe aren't doing as well. Or like, I think a lot of companies are like kind of scared to put something out there if it's not fully baked, and like they're scared to like, maybe get like, bad feedback. Like we look at the like roast us, like give us horrible feedback, like tell us like our product sucks. Like that is inherently like a good thing for our business, because it means like, hey, somebody's tried it out and somebody's giving us feedback like in terms of what they'd want to improve. And we're very, very open to that harsh feedback and the blunt feedback and all this type of stuff. Because at the end of the day, like we have tough skin, we want to make the best products possible. And now we're just doing like quicker feedback cycles in terms of making the product and improving the product as much as possible. And some of our best features and some of our best like things we built have literally just because like community members or maintainers or people trying to use the product have like failed or had issues or saw like, hey, we need to figure out like this particular challenge. And like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's prioritize that. Let's build it. So we're very, very open to it. I just don't know like how else are you gonna, like you can have design partners that are going to maybe give you feedback on it, but how do you now compress that dev cycle to be like way, way, way quicker? And I think building in public is the best way to do so.
No, I totally agree, and I think that's what I took some inspiration from, like you and others kind of start recording these videos and even the podcast. I think building in public definitely helps getting faster feedback, getting kind of that visibility, which attracts more kind of relevant people to the audience, etc.
Yeah, the one I love, like I love Max from Gumloop. He's been doing like a killer job making these videos. So every like I don't know if it's every week, but like he makes these videos and he's like, we saved this company X amount of time by building out this automation. And he just walks through the whole process. And they're been to have videos, but they're like infectious. Like you have to watch the whole thing. And I think like you can build in public in a really, really like fun, easy way. Like it doesn't need to be like demanding. Like it should be exciting, like an exciting part of your job. And we really empower like our whole team is just like post a lot, like like you make people aware of like the work you did today. I think it's really also interesting from like an accountability perspective. If you're posting about something publicly, now it's not just like the team you're not just accountable to the team, but you're now accountable to like thousands of people out there that are going to see this content. And we kind of joke around is like every time you post, like you could have a couple thousand, you could have 100,000, you could have 1 million people see your post. You want to make sure that you are like being the best face possible to the company. You want to make sure that you're presenting ideas in the best way possible. So this has been like really interesting to kind of see that kind of whole breakdown.
Totally makes sense. Yeah. Would love to jump to the future of kind of agents. How are you seeing like a quick question, like have you used Owen by any chance in any of your agents? How do you see like general LLM world going and kind of the agents improving?
So I think the biggest opportunity and like for agents in general is their agent developers and teams building agents is like look for the gray areas the large LLM providers are not going to touch. So I think mass web scraping is still one of these places like I don't know necessarily if they're going to touch. I don't know exactly what it looks like, but like I just across the board it seems like they're not touching it directly. Try and figure out these like very niche use cases. I think initially get traction there and then always expand from there. Would be my 2 cents. I think that long term, every company is going to be having, like, every company will have agents. Every company is going to have an agent developer on their team. It's just the nature of how this industry is growing and the power of the technology. In the same way you have like Salesforce engineers or like SAP engineers, like you will have like an agent engineer at almost every company that's just working on building out these automations. I think the future is more proactive, and that's kind of why we're going down this path we're building out right now with like automated evals and building out kind of agentic RPA type solution. I'm really bullish on it because I like to get the next billion people using agents. I don't think it's going to be a developer tool that gets you there. Like that's my initial idea. I think like even a product like Perplexity is so powerful. And I was back home in Canada, and like half the people, like more than half the people, had never heard of Perplexity. And so like there's this like there is like inherently like a distribution problem where like these amazing startups exist and some people just don't know they exist. So that's one aspect. And then I think like the future of the technology is just like don't bet against OpenAI, Anthropic, and Cohere and Gemini building very sophisticated agents. Like there's 100% chance. Like I see the job postings. Like I know they're actively working on it. It's just like, so from my perspective, it's okay if they're going to build agents, where do you go? Like what opportunities do you see exist? And I think that's going to be in these like kind of like automated, maybe like more proactive type agents that are just taking tasks away from you in real time.
Makes total sense. Would love to dive deeper on the job posting aspect and what type of agents do you think the big fours essentially, or kind of like in the LLM world probably a bit more, would dive into?
I think that like I've heard that OpenAI is building it on browser. I made a tweet about it like a couple weeks ago or a week ago or something like that. I think they are. Like I think like this is going to be a crazy like I think that the way we use computers fundamentally, and this is one thing Alex and I've been bullish on for a while, is going to change with full like full autonomous agents. So I think like maybe it lives within your browser, maybe it like automates your email workflows, maybe it automatically updates your CRM. I don't know exactly what it does. Like it's hard for me to even fathom what's possible. But I do think that these companies are going to be building out like more business specific use cases, just because everything is pointing towards like corporate is where they're going to get budget from. They already now like they did the approach where they got a little bit of foot in the door type approach. Okay, we've gotten OpenAI as the preferred provider at whatever large international conglomerate. Now it's like, okay, now let's push in our little agents. Now let's push in our customer success and whatever. Like I think for every vertical, OpenAI has a plan, and I think some other providers do as well. And that's kind of a very interesting opportunity for us because like, okay, they're gonna directly compete against a lot of these startups. I think the beauty of like having the plugins, like we had one of the top plugins at one time, and then like then the GPT store is like this whole time they're just collecting data on what worked, and then they're like, oh wait, if this is working, why don't we just include in our product? And like I think a good example is we had something called Chat OCR, and it's still up there as a GPT, but it was like one of the top like plugins or like OpenAI or ChatGPT plugins at the time, and they just built that natively. Like it just kind of became like a native feature. And so it's like we never thought it was gonna be a long-term business opportunity. We were just kind of playing around and seeing what was possible. And like we made like a pretty good business out of it. But I mean, the reality is it's like don't bet against them collecting these data points and like actually actioning them. And I think it's like not a bad thing. It's like they want to improve their products. They want to make the best products possible. And now you're just saying, hey, here's where usage is. So obviously they're going to jump in as much as possible there.
Got it. No, makes sense. And what are some of the challenges that you foresee in the agent space, like kind of going forward?
Okay, so this is one thing that I get very scared about is that I've seen some companies, they go make investments into agents. So they'll either buy like an off-the-shelf agent, or they see that they might go try and build their own agent, and then doesn't reach high enough reliability. So it's like a big company, they go put $500,000, $1 million into building out this agent. It doesn't work well, and now they just like have a sour taste in their mouth for what an agent is. And that piece really hurts me. So like I've been like trying to help as many companies as possible, make sure that like from day zero, they're making the right decisions when building agents. They're not just going down a rabbit hole of like trying to build up these successful agents or trying to build agents that like will actually never be successful. So a lot of the times is like when we meet with clients, is like descope the agent. Like don't try and build AGI. Like you're not going to build AGI with your 10-person engineering team. Like scope it back and like let's build something a lot more, robust and reliable. So the biggest thing I'm scared about is that like in the same way companies like maybe like 2019, 2020 started making like big bets into like Gen AI, now I'm seeing the same thing kind of happen with agents where they're taking these bets, and if they're the wrong bets and they don't pan out well, it just leaves a sour taste in their mouth for the whole industry. And that's very troublesome for me. So one thing I recommend is like we've tested like 400 agents. If anybody is like looking to build agents or test agents or like trying to even buy one off the shelf, just shoot me an email and I will respond to you like very concretely, hey, this thing is good or this one's bad. Like I don't mind. I think like I'd rather see like the best players in the space win because we know that like their tech works, and that like I think it boosts the whole ecosystem up if like companies are using agents that actually work reliably and that they can prove a positive ROI. Now it gives them a lot higher propensity to go test other stuff down the road.
That totally makes sense. And like, yeah, I think 400 agents is a big number. So kind of that experience definitely will hopefully helps a lot of listeners out there.
But yeah, I'm always happy to challenge down anybody. I think like from my perspective, very bullish on what you guys are building. I think it's an important part of the stack. I think that one thing I want to emphasize is like anybody who's listening to this, like go try and build something. Like go and like we made it with Agent Stack as simple as possible to get started building agents. And like it literally is like you can probably get your, grandparents building agents if you want to. And I think it's impossible to see what's possible with this tech. So go on YouTube. Like I spend so much time just watching YouTube videos. Like I'm a very visual learner. You don't need to look through docs. Just go on YouTube, see what's available, or find like looms in maybe companies' documentations and stuff like that. But I think everybody should at least try, even if you're not super technical, to see what's possible. And at least now you have a seat at the table to kind of discuss these things when your company starts exploring if they're the right opportunities or not.
Right. Yeah, and I think we have like a bunch of GUI agent builders as well come up and be like people are building some really great stuff like land flow, flow-wise, etc. So I think a really good opportunity on that front as well.
Awesome. But yeah, like I'm excited to do another episode like this in a couple of months from now, once everything like some of the RPA stuff we're working on is in GA, and kind of continue the conversation. Because I think like one thing I'll mention is like we're still very early with agents overall. Like we've not seen like the killer use case. Well, we've seen a couple killer use cases, but like right now, like we're still like using a baseball analogy. We're still in spring training. Like we have not made it to the major leagues yet in terms of what's possible. So you see all these big companies like Salesforce and massive organizations making bets on agents. But like we'll see like in a year from now what's actually deployed in production, and that's gonna be exciting to kind of continue to follow. And we can do a kind of follow up episode down the road about that. But this is like where I see some of the like biggest thing is like if you're listening to this, like you're already like light years ahead of the curve, like just start testing stuff and like build stuff and fail and like see where limitations exist and see what doesn't work and whatever. Like you doesn't need to take like immense amount of time. Just tinker for an hour and see what you can get done. And I promise it'll probably boggle your mind in terms of like if you just go like watch a couple tutorials on YouTube, what's even possible. I have like a directory of all these different kind of like Crew AI and AutoGen videos that I'm happy to share with anybody. I've compiled like a bunch of them. And then I also have like my list of agents. So if you want to like test out what's available kind of like off the shelf, like maybe we could share a link to that. I don't know exactly where to get posted. Besides that, it's been really, really great getting to chat.
Yep, same here. And this will be posted on YouTube, so we'll have all the kind of relevant material out there with the links to kind of reach out to Adam probably on Twitter and LinkedIn. So yeah, I think that was great, and we'll continue on the next episode with you. I think when I'm in SF, so in person, I guess.
Awesome! I can't wait to do it in person. Enjoy the day. Ciao.
Thank you.